Multiply your possibilities. Introducing Intel Core 2 Duo.
SpongeBob Adventures! Order up! It's time for some crazy underwater action with a new LEGO SpongeBob.
Whether my home smells fresh and clean. With Airwick Freshmatic, I can rest easy. It automatically sprays a...
Suddenly saw 2 scoops of raisins in a package of Kellogg's Raisin Bran.
2006. Those were the good days. Hello everyone, it is the Afro Avenger here with another album review. I haven't been making videos in the past few days because I've kind of been sick. I've had a bit of a cold, sore throat, and I'm still not doing all that well, but I think I feel good enough to at least, put a couple videos out. So today's album is Summertime '06 by Vince Staples. This was released June 30th of 2015. Some chart information: it peaked number 39 on the US Billboard 200 chart. It was released on the labels Def Jam, Artium, and Blacksmith, and its singles are Senorita and Get Paid. So without further ado, let's get this started. Summertime '06 has been on many people's list as among the greatest hip-hop albums of last year, and just one of the best albums of 2015 in general, and that's definitely some high praise. After several successful mixtapes in the Shine Cold Chain series and his EP Hell Can Wait, Vince finally releases a full-length album in Summertime '06. Much of this album is speaking on Vince's childhood in, of course, the summer of 2006, his upbringing in Long Beach, California, his involvement with gangs, and just many of his personal feelings towards life in general. The album is set up over 2 parts, over 2 discs, making a full 20-track LP with 10 tracks per disc. In other words, it's pretty lengthy, but in the good number of times I've listened through this album, it never really felt long at all. None of the tracks are long, it's just that there are a lot of tracks, but they all flow so well with each other, and that makes the album feel shorter than it actually is. Interestingly enough, trap influences didn't play a huge role on this album. Only about 1 or 2 tracks on here could even really be considered trap influence, Senorita being the most obvious one, which is funny because in my opinion, that was one of the highlights of the entire album and easily one of my favorite tracks. Many of the tracks have more of a type of production style that you'd find on people like Earl Sweatshirt's albums, which isn't surprising since they're so close and have worked together so often. Earl actually makes an uncredited appearance on the track Ramona Park Legend Part 2. Lift Me Up being the first track really sets the tone for the rest of the album, which is exactly what a good album does. It's dark, its aura is pitch black, and Vince is already explaining his situation, wanting to be lifted up out of it. His life growing up in the tough neighborhoods of Long Beach, California, and he's really skilled at painting pictures of where he's at, what he's doing, or what he did. That's something Vince does for the remainder of the album, and it's quite impressive for someone who doesn't have a whole lot of experience being a rapper, or someone who really never wanted to be a rapper in the first place. North North and Birds and Bees goes more into detail about his Crips origin, but he doesn't spend every minute on this album talking about gang stuff. It really varies, and it's nice that he's able to break up some of the themes of this album without necessarily breaking any of the album's flow in doing so. The first track that kind of goes in a different direction than the previously mentioned ones is Loca, which of course is Spanish for crazy in the feminine tense. Even though he's a hard gangster, he's still vulnerable to women, and yet he has many trust issues, a good number of them stemming from his life as a thug. Tracks like this are where the executive producer of this album, No ID, shine in this simplistic yet heavy beat. Vince has frequently collaborated with singer and label mate Jhené Aiko, and he does so again on the track Let Me Know, which kind of picks up from the previous track about Vince wanting sexual pleasure from a woman. In this track, Vince is talking to the girl, letting her know that he wants sex all the time, but he doesn't truly care about her feelings, nor does he truly love her. But it's really back and forth throughout the track. One moment Vince is just saying he wants to have sex, and the next, he's thinking that the girl is perfect wife material. Jhené Aiko is here to provide a feminine perspective, and both work so well on this track. The track Jump Off the Roof is perhaps the most interesting track, and definitely a turning point in the album. After several tracks talking about Vince's various addictions such as gangbanging, sex, and drugs in the previous track Dope Man, Vince comes to a realization that he doesn't want to be held down by these things. He has to metaphorically jump off the roof in order to confirm that he still has control over his life. He's still struggling with his addictions, but he's beginning to realize that he has a problem, especially when his girl, played by Snow Allegra, is pleading with him not to fall victim to his addictions. This track also has one of the coolest beats on the entire album, produced by No ID. It's really lo-fi in its style and texture, but it's so cool to listen to. Now, to go more in-depth on the track Senorita, it's actually really fascinating what he does on here. It's less about him going more into his gang life, and more about him asking questions that are relevant to life, especially if you're famous, such as, will your name hold weight when the curtains close? I love the heavy trap influence on this track, and that could be partly due to Future being featured on the hook. At the end, Snow Allegra returns to kind of satirize the life of a gangster who will resort to violence without having a reason to do so. The final track on the first half of the album, Summertime, sees Vince singing as opposed to rapping, and the style is very reminiscent of work by artists like Drake. He's opening himself up with every single one of his feelings and insecurities regarding his relationship with the girl that he's with, who has been a major theme throughout the album so far. It's so dark and personal and makes for an excellent end to the first half. Much of the second half continues on with the same themes as the first half, such as gangbanging and Vince's involvement with it. Ramona Park Legend Part 2 and 3230 exemplify this, but Surf is another shift within the album. Surf is about Vince riding the emotional waves after the death of his friend in the summer of 2006, and much of the rest of the album is about his mindset after this event. Might Be Wrong is different in that it doesn't really have Vince doing much of anything. James Fauntleroy and Cocaine 80s do pretty much all the vocal work, while there are interludes by Hanif Talib, who is speaking on the injustice in society and how a lot of it is based on skin color alone. The next couple of tracks continue the themes of gangbanging and making money, like Get Paid, Street Punks, and Hang and Bang, until we get to CMB, which stands for Coldest Nigga Breathing, and makes many references to the idea of racism in the US, kind of going back to what was being said on Might Be Wrong. Vince is also stating that he's one of the only true G's left in the game, while many are just phonies. Coming to the final real track on the album, Like It Is really brings the whole album full circle. He's going back to what he was talking about on the first track, Lift Me Up, where he's asking to be lifted from his situation in which there's violence and death all over. He wants to be lifted to heaven as opposed to staying where he is, which is quite literally a hell. After that, we have the track 06 to leave us with a cliffhanger for what might come in Vince's next album. On this track, Vince briefly relates his life to the kinds of TV shows people watch where, what's going on for real in Vince's hood are shown on TV shows and people just watch, sometimes for enjoyment, before the track ends with Static, making the feeling of it being like a TV show all the more real. Overall, this was easily one of the best hip-hop albums of last year, and it's so sad that Vince is so underrated. Of course, this is only his first real album, but he stated that he won't be making music for much longer and will quit soon. It's unfortunate, but his decision is his own. Regardless, I definitely enjoy this album. Again, it's rather lengthy, with being 20 tracks and about an hour long, but for me, it never felt long. It was a really good listen, and we got to learn more about Vince's life, as well as what it was like for him growing up. The beats were all incredible, and that's thanks to No ID, who produced the heavy majority of this album. The features were cool, Vince's lyricism, as usual, was on point, and it was just a really awesome album. I without a doubt recommend if you give this record a listen, as well as pick it up. Anyways, that does it for this album review. If you all like this video, please hit the like button, also subscribe if you want to see more, and if there's a song or an album that you want to see reviewed on this channel, just leave a comment down below, or check out my Facebook and my Twitter. The links are in the description. But anyways, thank you all again for watching. That does it for this video, and I will see you all in the next.
They're gone! I'm finally going to have Trix yogurt, and I get to try it with these crackling crystals.
Just popping in my mouth.